Very good morning to you. You're watching Daybreak at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is Daybreak. One of our top stories this morning, the deputy presidential debate will be held today, Tuesday, July 19th at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa in Karen, Nairobi. The deputy president post has assumed great significance in terms of, among other issues, what it brings to the ticket. So what are your expectations of today's debate? We invite your comments. Our SMS feedback number is 22422. The hashtag is Daybreak at Citizen TV Kenya. My guest this morning, and in no particular order, I'll be talking to Oliver Kipchumba. He's an advocate of the High Court. I'm also joined by Kabala, Kile, Deputy Party Leader, Narc Kenya, and Irungu, Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International. Gentlemen, good morning. Let's begin with the dailies. And the top story in the Standard this morning is the politics of ugali. So there's going to be a reduction in the prices of maize flour across the country. That's countrywide. And the government will pay millers the amount above the 100 shillings for every 2 kg packet of maize flour. Now, in the Standard, the headline story is politics of ugali. Irungu, I'll start with you. Kenya Kwanza's immediate reaction to this was they read political mischief in all of this. They feel that about 3 weeks to the election, there's absolutely no way that a subsidy would make sense, and in particular, a 4-week one. How realistic is this? How sustainable is this? What should Kenyans read into this?
So I think, first of all, I wouldn't dismiss a food maize subsidy at this point. Many Kenyans have found that the cost of living is just too high. There is issues about whether it will be implemented before the elections, and secondly, whether it is just a pre-election gimmick. And I think that's where Kenya Kwanza is making an interesting intervention. Can it be sustained post-August the 9th? But I think the other thing to note is that, 4.2 million Kenyans are facing starvation, and this subsidy will not touch them at all. So the question that we should be asking Jubilee at this point is, how are they responding to those people, particularly in northern Kenya, that are essentially not going to benefit from this at all? And what is the food relief strategy for them? And I think that's where we need to focus attention, both of the political parties and the current administration as it goes out.
Kipchumba, your thoughts on the politics of ugali, the headline story in the Standard?
Thank you, Lillian. It's a long debate that has been here with us for a while, but the germane question, I agree with Houghton that, number one, we need to ask ourselves, the people facing starvation are not the urban population, because this kind of intervention tries or goes to the urban population. What about the people in the villages away from the urban centers who do not, for example, buy ugali unga, but they have livestock which is really wasting away because of lack of food, lack of crop or something to feed on? Again, we come back to the question of timing. When we pushed Uhuru Kenyatta about the cost of living a few weeks ago, his response was out of touch response. He told us there is war in Ukraine, there is war between Ukraine and Russia. So the question is, why now? But again, we are saying Kenyans deserve this intervention, but they do not deserve it laced in political undertones. And the other question also we need to ask is the millers, because last time such an intervention was done, we are told to date the millers have not been paid. The other question is, what are the long-term strategies of averting such a crisis happening in future? Because Uhuru Kenyatta might be 20 days away from exiting the seat, but the government of Kenya is everlasting there. The government will continue with or without Uhuru. So what we need to ask is, what are the strategies for the long-term effects of whatever we are facing now? And the other thing also is, what are the strategies of the government to make sure that the issue of sustainable livelihood within this country is achieved?
Kabala, questions around the timing as well as the sustainability of this, and who, in fact, this will benefit. Is it the vulnerable Kenyan? Will the vulnerable Kenyan benefit from this move?
Thank you. About the timing, I'm wondering, when is it the best time to start fighting hunger? To me, I see this is the beginning, first of the many steps that the government is going to take. And what I read, as you asked, I read political goodwill. It shows when the people rise up together and insist and put pressure on the government has no other choice but listen to the people. So to me, it's just political goodwill and showing that the government is listening. And this is a first of many steps towards fighting hunger and addressing the issues that you say the 4.2 million members of our nation who are facing starvation. So
and Irungu, among the other issues that are being raised here in the Daily Nation is the fact that the government will, in the next 1 month, provide a subsidy to millers that will reduce the price of 2 kilos of this maize meal from 210 thereabout to about 100 shillings. A debt-strapped administration looking at now financing this subsidy, and essentially what should Kenyans read into this? We're going into a new administration possibly. So in terms of 21 days or so ahead, what should we expect and what should Kenyans expect in terms of the administration that's likely to take over and the fact that we are already dealing with a debt-strapped situation as a country?
So I think there are a couple of things here. One is that, yes, we are definitely going into a new administration. I mean, this is the one thing that is certain on August the 9th. This administration is not continuing on this point. The question, therefore, is whether this administration can make any policy pronouncements and make any decisions that will bind the incoming government. And I think the answer to that is no. The incoming administration will look at what is, what is possible within the framework. I think the second part of this is, and I think this is very important for Azimio and for Kenya Kwanza particularly, but of course we might see an Agano administration, we might see a Roots administration. So let's leave it open for the moment until Kenyans pronounce themselves. But I think the critical thing there really is that 3 weeks ago we saw one of the largest demonstrations in the capital. The Njaa revolution brought out hundreds of people, primarily from the informal settlements, and they basically said that the cost of living is unbearable. And they demanded that the cost of foodstuffs be brought down. Now, this coming, I guess, a couple of weeks or a week after that, one has to link a couple of things. One is, yes, and I think maybe we can just jump a little bit to is it the TIFA? No, I think it's the Infotrack study that was done, particularly in terms of Nairobi, where they said that 73% of the population of Nairobi felt that the country was going in the wrong direction. Why? Because of three things. The debt challenge, corruption, and the cost of living. Those three things. Now, Jubilee has attempted to respond to one of those three things in this initiative. But I think the key thing here is really how does the incoming administration deal with public protest that is definitely going to be with us for at least another year or so. As Kenyans begin to realize that actually their taxes, both income tax and value-added tax, are not going essentially to dealing with the problems that Kenyans are facing, but are going to paying back Chinese and European lenders. And I think that's the other question that we need to have. It's not an economic question. It's a public participation and political issue that the incoming administration will deal with. Because if they don't deal with that, we can expect maize riots, we can expect food riots, and it could lead to a situation where the government actually finds it ungovernable to be able to deliver on its manifesto promises.
Gentlemen, on the same.
Lillian, what we need to ask now is about, away from this being something that ought to have come long ago, we need to ask about the question of Parliament is on recess. We have not had recently of a cabinet meeting. So the question will be, from where do we get this kind of interventions? Whereas we understand there are political austerity measures to make Kenyans feel happy for the moment, because you must ask yourself, after the 14th of next month, August, the subsidy on fuel will not be there, because it was supposed to, the government was supposed to do away with the subsidy this month. But because of politics, again, we removed it. So Kenyans are going to the election not with the real picture of the economic situation, because the austerity that has been put in place for a month is to give them a kind of a massage, but the wound is still there. So at the end of the day, as we go to the polls, as we listen to the deputy presidential candidates today, we must know that after this election, fuel will go to 180 shillings. After this election, unga will go back to where it is, because we must realize that we need to raise for and now our debt is around 1 trillion, and we are collecting 2 trillion. So where will we get the deficit of 1 trillion? That is the question that must occupy us. And even as we listen to each and every political camp, we must ask ourselves, are they answering the question of our cost of living and the question of where will we get this extra 1 trillion without going back on our knees to the Chinese?
And then there lies the question, what policies therefore would be ideal to protect Kenyans from such unexpected vagaries going forward? 60 years after independence, Kenyans don't have a say in any of this. This is an unexpected turn of events, and as juicy as it seems, Kenyans are asking the question, what happens 4 weeks? 4 weeks after now, it's a 4-week subsidy. It's not effective as yet. Yes. Going around supermarkets, I'm 100% sure Kenyans will not be able to buy this commodity at 100 shillings today.
Because the other reality which nobody will tell Kenyans is, and I'm saying this is just the continuation of our politics of both sloganeering, never-ending promises, and the attempt to create a welfare state when we do not have capacity to sustain one. What we need to do going to the future, and as Kenya Kwanza we have said, we need to look at this economy from the bottom. We need to go back to the basics. What are the basics for this economy? That which holds the biggest part of the economy, agriculture. That which holds the biggest part of the economy, the informal sector, so that if we were to rejig the informal sector, let everybody get something going. That's why, how do we rejig the informal sector? Make sure that the TVETs can supply enough skilled labor to the informal sector. Make sure that there are loans that are cheap and available to the informal sector, so that, Lillian, at the end of the day, every Kenyan can fend for themselves. We cannot sustain a welfare state when we have 1 trillion Chinese loan on our back. And then again, look at what IMF is saying. You're adding salt to injury. It is telling the world that we are one of the second worst place to invest. So I think in terms of foreign direct investment, we have a lot of problems. The next administration must realize that they have to tighten their boots so that we can keep going as a nation. But what I'll leave Kenyans with in terms of cost of living, tough times lie ahead after these elections.
Let's look at another headline story, and this is on the deputy presidential debate that is slated for later today. We're seeing Gachagua versus Karua in the Daily Nation. That is the top story. We're seeing a comparison between the two, Martha Karua and Rigathi Gachagua. They're going to be going head to head later today. So just looking at the debate that's slated for later today, Kabale, and your expectations. But before that, in terms of these debates, we're coming from the Nairobi County gubernatorial debate, but this is a different platform altogether. We're now looking at national issues. Do these debates matter? Do you feel that they will in any way influence voting patterns across the country?
First of all, I'd like to disapprove what you just said. The Standard has corrected themselves. They said on today's paper about the economic indicator that Kenya is the worst. IMF has pulled itself from that report, so that's not a true statement. Two, I think the debates are very important this time round because of the high number of undecided voters. Most of the people, most of these two camps have already mobilized their people. What they're now trying to do is persuade. And through the debates are providing a platform where the candidates can show themselves, explain themselves to the people on live TV, especially on what have they done in the past, the historical background, their achievements, and how will their experience persuade members of especially those, the 25% undecided voters to vote on their side. So I believe that the debates are worthy. And even after the Nairobi debate, you saw the reaction on Twitter, how people are very elated and were talking about the jabs that the people were talking. And I believe my candidate will surely.
Right. And in terms of the understanding of the role of Deputy President Irungu, in terms of the Deputy President's roles and responsibilities, are they well established, in your opinion, in the Kenyan 2010 Constitution? We're looking at a Deputy President and a President that have not gotten along for the better part of the Jubilee administration's tenure. But in terms of the Deputy President's role and looking at the significance of today's debate, Is this role clearly defined? Has it been well understood and actualized, looking at the previous performance of the Deputy President?
Yeah. So I think our constitutional and legal framework is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it says, you know, that the deputy is essentially the assistant to the president and therefore can be assigned any duties, which on one side is so vague that it could lead to a situation where the deputy president is not really sure what they're doing except perhaps cutting ribbons and going to launch projects. But on the other hand, it leaves it sufficiently open for somebody who is clear, a president that is clear, to actually assign a responsibility. And I think what we saw with Martha when she was announced, she immediately declared what responsibility she would have, and that is the Constitutional Affairs docket. I think the American system, of course, has a clear definition. This is the person that is the leader of government business in Parliament or in Senate in the case of, I think it's in Senate in the case of the United States. So it's going to be interesting to see whichever president has the liberty of essentially running this government, how they're going to deploy their deputy president. In my view, I think there are a couple of interesting things. I mean, just first of all, to go to your first comment, these debates are so critical for the country. Right? They are the difference between essentially the kind of things we've seen in the political rallies where people jump onto SUVs and occasionally throw punches at each other, as we saw over the weekend. But really there are opportunities for people to explain to the country what vision they have for the country, and really for voters to have a sense of who they want to vote for based on their policy understanding, based on the temperament of the deputy president and the president. So I think they're so critical. But I think the other point I wanted to say was that we have what's going to be interesting today is we have 3 women and 1 man, and they can't be more different. Right? You've got 2 deputy presidential candidates, Justina and Ruth Mushero, or Justina Waboi and Ruth Mushero. Both of them come from the business sector. They have no experience in public administration. They're not politicians in the general sense that we know it. And then you have the 2 others who have garnered the 5% and therefore go to the second reign, which essentially is Rigade, who has 16 years of experience as a public administrator. He's been a member of parliament. And you've got Martha Karoa, who has been for many years a lawyer under a one-party state, a human rights lawyer under a one-party state, and has risked her career essentially in the early days before the second liberation to do this. She's also been a cabinet minister. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they position themselves, all 4 of them, over the next, over today. I think that's what I'd like to say about this.
Kipchumba, your expectations of the debate in terms of articulation of issues. We're looking at issues that Kenyans are expecting to be addressed, such as the cost of living, the debt situation in the country, and how each formation will address these issues.
Lilian, first of all, let me move away from what my colleagues are talking about. A debate ordinarily should be a very important segment of a political season. But looking at all the debates I've watched and listened to in this country, starting with my own Uasin Gishu gubernatorial debate and the recent held in Nairobi gubernatorial debate, I have very low expectation of the whole thing, for a simple reason. One is we will major in the minor things. We will the moderators at times tend to go deeper on gossip and side issues, and we end up reducing the whole discussion to a saloon kind of a setup. If the Nairobi discussion is say anything to go by, look at what happened. The last quarter of the debate is when we now delve to real issues. I hope today we will jump into the main issues, and then again, Kenya Kwanza, Azimio, the other 2 camps have manifestos. Why don't we narrow down to how these people have responded to their issues here? Secondly, there is another misconception. If you look at the office of the deputy president through the eyes of William Ruto, we might not get what we are looking for as a country, because he's a huge politician, he has a bigger-than-life personality. But what we need to ask ourselves is, when you come to Article 147 of our Constitution, even what also Azimio are promising Martha Karua, when you go down to 147.4, that doesn't exist. You can only have one role, to be the deputy president. But again, The problem we have in this country is harmonizing the legal position of a deputy president and the political formation role of a deputy president, because at the political formation, it is a bargaining chip. At the legal position is supposed to be the principal assistant of the president. So, and that is that and the role of being chair of IBEC, Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Forum, those are the only two known legal roles of a deputy president. But again, being the deputy spokesperson of each camp, we will expect to see these people. Do they really understand the manifestos being sold by their candidates? Number two is, do they really bring on board what we want as Kenyans as just the extra reasoning away from what the presidential candidate is bringing? But in terms of the final tally of the vote, I will depart from what my friend is talking about. The debate in this part of the world do not add any vote. It is a feel-good moment for your supporters, because at this juncture, there is nobody who is still undecided. And I'll tell you why we have more undecided this time. It is because of how our politics has been done. If today you are a civil servant and those pollsters send you a text, you will not respond, because maybe you will say, maybe I support William Ruto, and if I respond, maybe these are my employers looking for me. If you come from a place where, let's say, for example, a county where William Ruto has a huge following, people will not respond to the other one. So at the end of the day, how government has politicized most of our institutions, it becomes difficult for a genuine Kenyan to respond to the pollsters' question, because at the end of the day, everybody is keeping safe. But if it was to be left open, the number of undecided will reduce by half or even by 3/4. So at the end of the day, the debate will be there. It is a good thing, but my question and my plea to the media is, whoever will be moderating, let them do a little of research. Let them give Kenyans value for their time for coming to watching the debate. Let us not go to asking Rigathi, where were you in 10 years? What was the name of your mother? Or asking Martha Wangari, when you walked out of Moi in that stadium, which color of the handbag were you carrying?
Right. And Kabale, in terms of both sides of the political divide, when you look at Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, we're seeing both promising economic revolution for the vulnerable. So in terms of issues that Kenyans want addressed and how each formation will address that, let's go step by step, beginning with economic revolution, which we have had both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza speak very strongly about. What are you expecting to come out from these candidates this evening as they address issues around economic revolution?
We already have an action plan, and one of the major action points that we have is Azimio la Viwanda, where we are focusing on manufacturing and one product, one county. Where if your county is good, for example, I like using the example of Meru, where we know Miraa is well grown there, and that county is known for Miraa. Embu is known for Mogoka. Ukambani is known for mangoes. So we want to invest in counties in such a manner that, you know, if you need good maize, Trans Nzoia is the best county. So one product, one county. And also encouraging Azimio la Jitihada, where we have professionals, masons, artisans who have worked in this industry for a long time and don't have the accreditations to even get into formal employment. So these are some of the ways and economic revolution ideas that Kenya Kwanza Azimio has. And I'm also looking forward to listening to the historical backgrounds of, as I said earlier, of these individuals. Because, you know, when you're going for an interview, you're going to show people what have you done before. And for us, Martha Wangari Karua, this senior counsel, has already been in all the three arms of government. She's in parliament, she's been in judiciary, and she's been in the executive. And she's performed exemplary in all three. So we want to see what experience that Rigathi have in terms of the governance of the nation. We know he's been in the administrative sector, but what does he know about justice? What does he know about the executive, where you need to go and sign treaties with other nations? So it'll be a very interesting debate for me, and that's just, I want to see what what they bring on the table in terms of experience. Yes.
We're taking a very short break. We're back with more in just a bit. Please continue sending in your tweets. I'll be forwarding your questions and comments to the panelists in studio tonight and this afternoon. For the better part of the evening, the Deputy President the Deputy President debate will be held at the Catholic University of East Africa, and we will be waiting to hear what the Deputy Presidential candidates will have to say as regards their vision for this country. We're back in just a bit. Stay with us.